always the last 2 days of finals week. There will be an announcement that comes out from the university that will give you the dates and the place of the closing. That's when you want to bring those 15 copies of the candidate information form.
December 13th and 14th.
And that's when you want to sign up for the interview. And I would recommend that everybody sign up for the interview. It's a great time for you to explain your file a little more, to answer questions, to give them some highlights.
No one doesn't sign up for the interview. Everybody signs up.
Well, yeah, and so there you go. Everyone signs up for the interview. So don't be that one person that doesn't. We don't want to break that rule. So make sure you sign up for the interviews. I wanted to put that out there too about the closing dates.
And also if you are counselor, athletic trainer,
Coach,
and
a librarian.
okay, those CIFs again, the candidate information forms are different because the order of the categories are different. So again, one more time, please go to the Senate official website, see down the CIF for your category and print that so that you can use that.
If you can't be here for the closing, you can authorize somebody in writing to close for you.
Hold on.
Question in terms of the candidate. So there's one that's automatically generated by that thing, right?
Digital
Is that
measures.
what you're saying?
The digital measures.
It has
you
problems.
will take that? Yeah. That unfortunately does not line up with the same form that the Senate has approved. It's generated, but it doesn't present the information correctly. So
What's that system called again?
Digital measures.
Right. So that should, I mean, it would be great to maybe take that link off. or
I know,
something,
I know. We did not put that. We should.
Yeah.
It is not us. So.
Set up nicely because
I worked with them for many years to try to make them more compatible. But if you use that form, you might have to edit it. You have to get the Senate form and then have them side by side and edit it to make sure it follows the form. So I guess we've answered all your questions now.
No, there's got to be some questions. I know I saw some hands, and then every time I talk, they go down.
Barbara?
I was asking about the digital measure forms and I'm all set.
I read your mind.
You did.
Okay.
You knew right where we were.
David's always available to, well, except for when he's teaching and things, but he's always available to, and willing, and I'm volunteering him, to help you. For any questions or anything, you can always stop by our office. Don't ask me to help you with your file because I wouldn't be able to, but any questions or I can direct you to people. As far as helping you with some of the, procedures and things, of course. But does everyone know what we're talking about when we're talking about Senate documents and we're talking about the guidebook and we're talking about and where to find them, right? And if you don't, you can come and see me. I'm more than happy to tell you where to go. It's so quiet in here. Somebody's got to say something.
I think that in previous years, there was some tension about a discrepancy between, let's say, P&T recommendations and then the provost recommendations. But we feel that through, communication over the years, open communication, and a change in leadership, that we're back to very few differences in the final recommendations. So that's very positive. And one of the anxieties people had was about whether somehow that's the promotion and tenure committees or the administration's expectation of creative activity had changed. And it's never changed. We base our for the P&T committee, we base our evaluations on the contract and on the Senate document. And those tend to look at expectations in your field, which are then articulated by your DEC chairperson and dean. We don't have our own artificial expectations that we begin with. I remember there's somebody who expected I remember somebody, is an older colleague or a longtime colleague, who assumed when I was elected chairperson that somehow because I published 13 books that I was going to somehow expect other people to do the same thing, and I thought that was really ridiculous, even insulting, because we're guided by the contract and the Senate document, and my approach is that the contract encourages us to look at a holistic file. We're looking at 4 categories, and you apportion your time, between among the categories. In some cases, there's more emphasis on category 1. In some cases, there's more emphasis on category 3, and depending on who you are and your department's demands and so forth and so on. So I think that more holistic approach, and it's not my idea, that's always been encouraged by the faculty, the P&T leadership going back to people you've probably never heard of, but we have a service award named after Bob Jersa and also Jerry Schultz in the math department. John Kavanaugh is still here. John's still around.
Yes.
That encouraged this, this looking at the holistic view of a file. So yes?
I have a question.
Finally.
Yeah. So with so many changes in the leadership of the university, I came here under, I'm with the liberal arts group, I'm hostel with the political science department. So it was a new dean, when I came here, we had a new provost and we have a new president now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So did the strategy or did the philosophy behind the process and the height of the bars that the new group of people who are above the P&T committee who are going to make decisions, did any of these things change, and or did you have the chance to talk to them to see where they stand in terms of the height of the bar?
We had a lot of conversations. I'll just say something and then I could ask Maria to say something. We had a lot of conversations about that divergence between the P&T recommendations and the provost decisions. That was, I think we called it the elephant in the room. And we talked about it, and President Joe said, look, I really see this as a faculty-driven process. And he set that leadership tone, and then that gap narrowed, almost disappeared. So that's why I'm very positive about that, and we just have to keep it. We have to keep it here.
I underline what David said. President Joe has repeatedly, publicly, more than once said this is a peer review evaluation, this is a faculty evaluation. We reminded them of the contract. For example, the dichotomy happened a few years ago, under creative activity, and there was a different belief of what it means. I keep reminding everybody the contract is very vague on what creative activity is, but the Senate document is trying to give a list of what could the department use as the creative activity. Therefore, it's in your field, it is your responsibility. Maybe the DC, maybe the department chair needs to highlight exactly what of those list items is appropriate for your discipline. We have tried, maybe close to 8-10 years ago, to create departmental guidelines where people in the department decide what should be in the file, what's important to be in the evaluation files. That was also kicked out, but we're trying to revive it because the current president and provost want to hear from the individual departments what they value in their own discipline. So we're going to try to have that document be approved by the Senate, be approved by the provost and the president, and use it at the evaluation process. But for now, it is up to the candidates to highlight what it is the expectation, the official expectations are from the department, from the discipline. Hopefully it goes up the line from there to the DC, etc.
I'm Steve Judd. I've been on the committee for, 5 years now, 4 years? A while. It's especially important for you to highlight things in terms of creative activity. Because this is the area that, for us as a committee, is often hardest to evaluate. Teaching, category 1, fairly similar standards and ideas that we all have because we all teach. Service, we know which committees are work, which committees are less work. But when it comes to creative activity, it's more difficult. You're preparing a file to make your case to fellow academics who are not in your field. I don't know what the best journals are in every field. I don't know what it means to be third co-author on a paper in this journal as opposed to first author on a paper. Those kinds of things you need to explain to us and help us to understand the significance of in your file. And that's something to emphasize. Remember, we're fellow academics, but we're not experts in your field. So if it's you're publishing in a top-tier journal, tell us. If it's traditional to list co-authors alphabetically, tell us. Especially if your name is late in the alphabet, and we might instinctively think the end of a list is the less important author. Or if there are conventions like this, let us know because we don't know.
But there's one example of Lafitte can help us with, because in the School of Business there's a recognized list of journals. It's got a name. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, it's the Australian Business Dean's journal list.
And I'm not allowed to Google that. You should tell us.
Put it in your file.
What the standardized journals, the standard journals are.
Because Cabell's is another.
Cabell's, so because your accreditation requires that you publish in those, but I wouldn't know what those were. Now, Steve mentioned creative activity, but it's also true in category 1. If you get research reassigned time, how many of you have had research reassigned time? Not enough, but you should give the detail about what you did. Don't just say 3 credits research reassigned time. Say, it was for this project, I've done this, the work is in progress, because we're going to judge that that's the highest weighted category. That's a multiplier of 10. So that's important to give some detail. Don't worry, because that CIF form is electronic, it's expandable. You don't have to don't economize there.
To that category number 1, I will also urge you to include, if you get reassigned time, for example, I get reassigned time because I'm the president of the Faculty Senate, please list your duties so others can see that you get 3 credits, 6 credits, it's not worth it, but nevertheless, list all of your duties that you do so that they recognize why you're getting those 3 credits release time for any administrative duties.
The other thing that I've heard said before, when there's co-authors or multiple authors, is to actually identify your contribution that you made to the whatever you co-authored or you were a part of, whether it be a journal or a book or whatever it may be, because they need to know like what part of that book or what part of that journal or what part of that article you actually participated in doing. Because again, if your name's at the last, it may or may not be that you did a lot in that book, or you may have done an awful lot, and they would like to know what your contribution was. So if you could explain that as well.
And because of the recusal rule, if there is somebody in your department on the committee, they can't say anything. They can't clarify. So that's why Steve's point is excellent. You have to give us that detail and emphasis on what you did. Because different fields are different. One person might be doing the writing. Someone else might be doing the numbers. What do you call that?
Analysis.
Yes,
Data analysis.
Data analysis.
Data analysis.
Right. So you don't have the article without the data analysis, so that's what you did then.